Greetings, everyone. Once again, it's Mandaté sharing the authentic truth brought to us by Zulula 100, the only teacher. Today, the teaching I will share is going to be regarding to show that Jesus has never existed. Some say that will claim that the historians have proven that the so-called Jesus, the white guy with blue eyes, has existed. We're going to prove here that it is a lie. It's a big lie, a falsification of history, and many black people have fallen into the trap of believing in a so-called white savior. They've changed their history, they tried to falsify history, change, and the lie made him up. And they've tried to put his story in history, because he was made up, that personage, and they try to introduce him in history. But it doesn't hold up. It doesn't add up. We're going to go here in Matthew chapter 2, verse 1. It says, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judah, during the time of King Herod, comma. So here you're told, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judah, comma. After. So that so-called Jesus was already born. That's what they claim here. During the time of King Herod, comma. So you're told here in the current classical Bible that that so-called Jesus was born during the time of King Herod, meaning he was born and the King Herod was alive. Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem. Amplified Bible. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judah in the days of King Herod, in bracket, and which Herod is it? Herod the Great. That's what it says here in bracket in the Amplified Bible. Herod the Great, comma, Magi, wise man from the east, came to Jerusalem asking. So you're told that the so-called Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judah during the reign of King Herod. So that King Herod was alive. Now we shall go in history and see when that King Herod was alive. What does the historian say, the researchers say when Herod was alive, the so-called Herod the Great? And I will put the link as well of that in the description. So it says, Herod, also known as Herod the Great, was a Roman client king of Judah, referred to as the Herodian kingdom. And he says, Herod was born in 72 before Christ. So you're told that the so-called Herod was born 72 years before Christ, in or around 72 before Christ, in South Judea. And it says that his reign, so the time where he was king, was 37 before Christ to 4 before Christ. So he was born before Christ. His reign, so the time he was king, it was before Christ, and he died before Christ. So he, according to the historian, he was born, reigned, and died, all that before the so-called Jesus. So when they made up his history, they tried to introduce him in the general history, the history of the so-called Jesus, to make it believable. So that's why in Matthew chapter 2, verse 1, they try to introduce him in history. And they say he was born in Bethlehem in Judah, that so-called Jesus. And they try to say during the time of King Herod, Herod the Great. You see, they're trying to introduce him into history to say that's when he was born, that's the period of time during the time that king was alive. But it will not add up. It will not hold up to the archaeologist, to the historian, because the historian said that Herod the Great was born 72 before Christ and died 4 before Christ. And his reign was 37 before Christ and 4 before Christ. You see? So, even the popes, the people in the Vatican, they know that that so-called Jesus was made up. It was invented. It's a falsification. It's a lie. That they try to spread and to falsify black people through history, to make them believe in a false Christ, in an invention, to remove them from the source, to make them believe in lies. In Matthew chapter 2 verse 19, it says in the English Standard Version, "But when Herod died, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, So you're told here in the current classic of the Bible that when Herod died, who is Herod? That Herod the Great, who died before the so-called Christ. And you're told an angel appeared to Joseph in a dream. Verse 20 saying, "Rise, take the child and his mother and go to the land of Israel, for those who sought the child's life are dead." Verse 21, "And he rose and took the child and his mother and went to the land of Israel." Verse 22, "But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judah in place of his father Herod." You see, they try to make it fit. That's why they also introduced the son of Herod the Great in Matthew 2:22. They say, when he heard that Archelaus, and when you research regarding Archelaus, Herod Archelaus, ancient Greek, he's ancient Greek, then they write down the name. He says, Archelaus was removed by Roman Emperor Augustus when Judah province was formed under direct Roman rule. Archelaus came to power after the death of his father Herod the Great in 4 BC, in 4 before Christ, and ruled over 1/2 of the territorial dominion of his father. You see, so the historian, because Archelaus, he was alive and he reigned after his father, and his father was Herod the Great, and his reign began 4 BC, before the Christ. But in Matthew 2:22, the so-called fake Jesus, they claim he was already alive, and that he was born even when the so-called Herod the Great was still alive, was still reigning. But that is historically inaccurate, is historically false, because that Jesus never existed. It is an invention. It's a lie. They tried to make, they made up. It's all made up. It's fake. There's no trace in history other than when you take the so-called Bibles, which we demonstrate that when they give that he was born in the day of Herod the Great, it's wrong. So that's falsification of history. Stop believing in the lie, in an invention, in an invented personage. Now, we are in the time of the second, the Liberator, because it was already prophesied. And we see that in even in the current classical day Bible. In Isaiah 19, verse 20. And it shall be a sign and a witness unto the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt. For they shall cry unto the Lord because of the oppressors, and he shall send them a Savior, comma, and a great one. And a great one. So there is the Savior and there is the great one. And he will send them a Savior and a champion, and he will deliver them. And the champion is here. The champion is Zulula 100, who liberate us from the lie, from the indoctrination, from the invention that is the so-called Jesus, the white Savior. So, Jesus never existed. The white Savior complex invention is debunked. The liberator of black people is here, Zulula 100. And is also the liberator of all those who love the truth and justice. All glory be to Loba, the only and unique creator.